No doubt you've seen that video by now. You may, like a whole lot of people, be outraged by it. A paying United passenger who was dragged out of his seat so airline employees could fly instead. United is standing by their employees, but customers around the world are not standing by United. As for the White House, this is what Sean Spicer had to say during the daily briefing.
I don't think that it is my place to get in the middle of judging how a company dealt with this, but I think from a human-to-human standpoint, to watch a human being get dragged down an aisle with their head banging off armrests and not think that it could have been handled better, I would assume that we could probably all agree on that.
Here's a look at United Airlines stock right now. No surprise there. It is down, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, there is the stock right there on your screen. We're going to get more on earnings news after the bell. And it's not just here in America. China is PO'd. People there calling for a boycott, and that could really hurt considering how many flights United runs out of that country. Tom Costello covers aviation for NBC News and joins me now from our Washington newsroom. Tom, we now know who that passenger was.
Yeah, his name is Dr. David Dow. He is a doctor from Louisville, Kentucky. And by the way, Katie, you know, the stock is just up a fraction right now. It had been down as much as 4% for exactly the reason you cited, and that is because of the China effect. This internet video has gone viral in Asia, exploding in China, because people are very concerned on the belief that he may have been singled out because he's Asian. But there's a lot more to the story that we've learned. First of all, Dr. David Dow of Louisville, Kentucky, has had legal trouble in the past that in no way justifies the way he was treated. But in 2003 and 2004, he was convicted on drug charges for peddling, if you will, narcotics in Louisville, Kentucky. In addition, those officers you see there, they are not police officers. Those are security officers, security guards, if you will, that somehow got called to that airplane and then yanked Mr. Dow, Dr. Dow, out of his seat. And in the process, he hit his head on the armrest. By some accounts, he was unconscious at that point when they drug him or drug him out down the aisle, if you will, and his face all bloodied. And then there's another piece to this whole thing. Oscar Munoz, who, as you know, is the CEO of United Airlines, put out these tweets and then the statement to airline employees, which certainly would seem to be tone deaf, in which he essentially accused this passenger of this passenger's behavior of really being behind everything that occurred on that plane. Some passengers are now telling us that, in fact, Dr. Dow and his wife had agreed to accept $800 each in vouchers to voluntarily leave the plane. But then when they got off the plane, they realized they wouldn't be able to get home until the next day. Dr. Dow said, I have to get home. I'm a doctor. I have to see patients. And so he got back on, and that's when he said, I'm sorry, I'm not leaving. I have to take this plane. And things escalated from there and got rather physical. We've seen video, which has not yet been released, which would suggest that he was certainly adamant and forceful, but he was not in any way physical when he said, I'm not leaving, I'm taking this plane. We are expecting another statement of some sort from United Airlines. Katie, we have talked to an awful lot of people who say that there is a recognition within United Airlines that they have handled this very badly, and that now, in fact, with this going viral around the world, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, and it's going to be very difficult to contain the public relations fallout and the damage it's doing to the company's image, especially in that critical market of China. Back to you. Tom
Costello, with a little bit of wisdom there. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. Tom, thank you very much. Joining us now, aviation attorney and expert Andrew Maloney. Andrew, so how should this have been handled? They needed those 4 seats for their flight crews going to other flights, so other flights were not delayed. But the guy was sitting in his seat. How were they supposed to? What are they supposed to do?
It's very unusual to try to eject somebody involuntarily in an oversold airline when they've already sat down. Typically, you see this at the gate. They know that there's going to be a problem in an oversell situation. They should have known, I assume they did know, that they were going to have to get 4 seats for
Is it an oversell, or did they just suddenly need seats for the crew? I mean, it sounds like they had enough seats for the passengers.
Yeah, but it amounts to the same thing. They needed 4 seats to get some of their flight crew to another destination. I'm not certain whether or not they had jump seats available to flight crews like you sometimes see in the cockpit, or an extra one for a flight attendant to sit there, or another part of the plane. But evidently there were no other seats available, and so they wanted to involuntarily remove passengers.
So they should not have let him on the plane in the first place, is your point you're making. But this is just the latest bad headline for United. I want to read through a couple of them. In 2015, the airline came under fire for removing a girl with autism from a flight for saying she was, quote, disruptive. A flight attendant also denied a Muslim chaplain on a flight an unopened can of soda. And just a few weeks ago, a couple girls were denied entry for wearing leggings. That can be argued, though, because they were flying on employee passes, basically family employee passes, and there is a dress code required for people flying in those situations. But given all of these past negative headlines, wouldn't United be a little bit more sensitive to it? They did respond defending themselves in each of those situations, but
when you have to explain yourself each time when there's another episode, it looks pretty bad. They don't have very good management of the customer service relationship with their passengers. That's their bread and butter. That's their lifeblood. They need to do a much better job and live by the adage that the customer is always right. Obviously, there has to be some balance. The airline has to do certain things to fly, and when they have an oversell situation, they have to try to get people to voluntarily give up a seat. But they blew it in this case.
But are airlines in the higher position, though, at the moment, just because people need to get places and ultimately you're going to pay for the cheapest ticket you can find, no matter what? I mean, do the airlines hold the power here because passengers are just kind of up against the wall in terms of choices?
Well, I think when you're booking your flight, passengers do have choices. I think travel is very stressful. If you didn't have to fly, you wouldn't fly. But you're right. You sometimes have no choice. You got to fly, and you typically want to get the cheapest flight available if you're paying for it out of pocket, and you want the one that's most convenient for you. So there are limitations in terms of where you can go, who you can go with, and when you can go. And so, yes, the airline has the upper hand when it comes to that. But it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
They've done incredible damage to their public relations with the public flying for United Airlines.
Indeed. Aviation attorney Andrew Maloney, we really appreciate your time and coming in for us on this Tuesday. Time to check the pulse of our viewers. We've been asking you, should airlines stop overbooking flights, even if it means that you pay more? Here is how you are reacting. 84% of you still say yes, please stop overbooking those flights. I couldn't agree more. You can always add your voice to pulse.msnbc.com. We'll be right back, but first, with the New York Auto Show ramping up, Cadillac is revving up to launch its own autopilot system. Here's today's Verge update.
Cadillac is taking aim at Tesla as it readies its new self-driving technology to be released this fall. The CT6 sedan will be the first car from GM to feature Super Cruise, a highly automated system that lets drivers cruise hands-free while on the highway. Cameras and sensors keep the car in line, but if the driver becomes distracted, Super Cruise initiates a series of alerts like lights and vibration to get their attention back on the road. The mapping technology can even control where drivers use Super Cruise to ensure that it's not being used recklessly. That's the update. Check out more on TheVerge.com.